When I saw her, that little girl with the same dimple on her left cheek as mine, I forgot how to breathe. My husband was smiling, standing in the doorway with a toddler on his hip, saying, "Look who's home." Home. I remember that word echoing through me like thunder, as if the walls of my own house were mocking me. Because 5 months earlier, I was told that my baby, my little girl, had died at birth. And now, here she was, laughing, reaching her tiny arms toward me. That moment cracked open something inside me that I can't ever put back together again. Before everything fell apart, my life was quiet, predictable, even. I worked part-time at the library, sorting returns and helping old Mr. Jenkins find his mystery novels every Friday. My husband, Victor, was a businessman, quiet, serious, a man of schedules and polite smiles. We'd been married 6 years when we decided to try for a baby. Those months were filled with hope. I painted the nursery soft yellow, spent evenings reading baby name books aloud while Victor scrolled on his phone, half listening. His mother, Evelyn, called daily with advice I never asked for: the right prenatal tea, the wrong kind of pillows, the dangers of epidurals. She had a way of turning every joy into a checklist I could never quite complete. But I told myself she meant well. That's what daughters-in-law are supposed to tell themselves. Still, I cherished that pregnancy. Every flutter in my belly felt like a promise that I wasn't alone anymore. The night I went into labor, the rain was relentless. The world outside our windows was a blur of water and street light. Victor drove fast, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Evelyn insisted on coming with us. "A mother's presence brings strength," she said. I didn't argue. I didn't have the energy to. At the hospital, things moved quickly, then not at all. I remember the pain like an ocean, rising and falling, endless. Voices, lights, and then, black.
The mortgage came straight from our joint account, but there was another transfer labeled property expense, rental. He'd told me it was a small storage unit he kept near his workshop. I never questioned it. Why would I? Love, I've learned, isn't blind. It's trusting to the point of blindness. On weekends, Michael was a family man. He'd mow the lawn, grill burgers, and fall asleep on the couch with the game still playing. He'd make us laugh with his goofy dad jokes and the way he'd dance while flipping pancakes. He was my anchor in every storm. Except, of course, when the mortgage notices started coming late. At first, I blamed the bank, then the mail, then myself. Maybe I'd missed something. I called customer service and confirmed 2 payments had been delayed, 1 missed. I remember sitting at the kitchen table that evening, staring at the statement. The numbers didn't make sense. Michael had said he'd transferred the money. When he came home, I showed him the letter. He didn't even blink. "Oh, that," he said. "It's just processing late. Don't worry about it." His voice was so calm, so casual, that I almost believed him. Almost. But something in me, something small and quiet, didn't sit right. Maybe it was the way he avoided my eyes, or how he changed the subject to Emily's school project. Maybe it was how he hugged me a little too tightly that night, whispering, "You're my whole world." I wanted to believe him. I did. But trust, once cracked, never sounds the same again. The first clue/suspicion begins. It started one Saturday morning. Michael said he was heading to a nearby town for work, 3 hours away, to help an old client repair a machine. That wasn't unusual. He was a mechanic, often called out for side jobs. But that morning, he dressed differently. He wore a crisp shirt, not his usual oil-stained one. And he smelled faintly of cologne, something subtle, expensive, and new. "Big job today?" I asked, half joking. He smiled, avoiding my eyes.
Sometimes, I heard my name. Then, one afternoon, while tidying up in the guest room, I found something strange, a folded piece of paper tucked under the dresser. It was a hospital bracelet, pink, with a date that matched the day I gave birth, and a name scribbled in ink, Baby Carter. The sight of it made my hands tremble. I didn't understand. Why would Evelyn have this? I brought it to her later that evening, my voice shaking as I asked, "Why was this in your room?" She froze for a fraction of a second, then smiled, that sharp, polite smile of hers. "Oh, sweetheart, the nurse must have given it to me by mistake when I was collecting your belongings. You know how chaotic those nights can be." Her tone was light, but her eyes, they were warning me to stop asking questions. I tried to convince myself she was right. Maybe it was just a mix-up. Hospitals are messy messy, but something about the way she looked at me, calm, cold, unflinching, made me feel like I was missing something important. That night, I dreamed of my baby. She was wrapped in a pink blanket, reaching toward me, her lips moving but no sound coming out. I woke up crying, the sound muffled against my pillow. 5 months later, Victor told me he needed to go on a business trip for a few days. He didn't say where. Evelyn packed his suitcase herself. When he returned, he didn't call from the airport, didn't text. He just walked through the door late one evening, his face brighter than I'd seen in months. And in his arms, a toddler. I remember every detail. The faint smell of baby lotion. The tiny white dress with embroidered flowers. The way her eyes, my eyes, blinked up at me curiously. She's ours, Victor said quietly, like it was a gift he'd brought home. They made a mistake. She's alive. For a heartbeat, I couldn't move, couldn't speak. Then I ran to her, but Evelyn stepped between us.
Because I needed proof. Over the next few weeks, I gathered quiet evidence, receipts, bank alerts, photos of transfers. Each piece felt like a shard of glass cutting deeper into my chest. Emily noticed the change in me. "Mom, are you okay?" she asked one evening, sketching by the window. I forced a smile. "Just tired, sweetheart." I wasn't just tired. I was breaking, but I had to stay strong for her, for the truth I wasn't ready to face yet. Because deep down, I already knew what it meant. Michael wasn't paying for a storage unit. He was paying for another home, and someone named Ava lived there. I remember the night I decided to find out for sure. The air was heavy with August heat, and cicadas hummed outside the window like a warning I couldn't quite hear. Michael was in the living room watching TV, feet propped on the coffee table. I was sitting in our bedroom, pretending to fold laundry while I stared at his phone charging on the nightstand. My heart raced so loudly I could hear it in my ears. I had never snooped through his things before, not once in 15 years. But that night, my shaking hands didn't feel like mine. I unlocked his phone. The passcode was still my birthday. Ironic, really. At first, everything looked normal. Texts from coworkers, friends, even a few from me, little love notes and grocery lists. But then I saw a thread labeled simply A. It was full of messages. Hundreds of them. "I'll be home next weekend, promise. Tell Ava I love her. Don't worry, I covered the rent." I scrolled until my eyes blurred. There were pictures too. A woman I didn't recognize, with long brown hair and tired eyes, holding a little girl with Michael's dimples. My stomach turned cold. I felt my knees buckle, and I sank onto the bed, phone clutched to my chest as if holding it could stop the world from spinning. He had a family. A whole other family. I didn't remember crying, just the taste of salt and the sound of my breath coming in short.
Hope, false hope. The phrase cut through me like ice. "So, for 5 months, I whispered, you just kept it to yourself." Victor's voice cracked. "I was protecting you." Evelyn folded her arms. "And the child," she added firmly. "There were complications. The hospital wanted to keep her under observation. They thought she might have developmental issues. We didn't want to burden you with that until we were sure." Burden. That word echoed in my head until I felt sick. I looked at Lily again. She was smiling now, babbling softly to herself, tapping her tiny feet against the couch. Perfect, whole, alive. Everything inside me broke open then. Grief, rage, relief, disbelief, all tangled into something unbearable. I stood up so quickly the chair scraped against the floor. "You lied to me," I said. "You both lied. You took months from me." Victor reached for me, but I stepped back. "Don't," I said, trembling. "Don't you dare touch me." That night, I couldn't sleep. Lily was asleep in the guest room with Evelyn, who refused to let me take her. "She doesn't know you yet," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I lay awake in my bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. None of it made sense. How could a hospital make such a catastrophic mistake? And how could my husband hide something so monumental? By morning, I decided I needed answers. I waited until Victor left for work. Evelyn was in the kitchen, humming as she fed Lily oatmeal. I forced a smile, said I was going for a walk, and left. But I didn't go to the park. I went to the hospital. The receptionist looked puzzled when I explained why I was there. "Stillbirth, 5 months ago," I said, "but now the baby's alive. I need to understand what happened." She typed something into her computer, frowned, then disappeared into a back office. When she returned, she looked nervous. "Mrs. Carter," she said softly, "there's no record of a live birth under your name for that date. Only a still.
The days that followed were a blur. Michael tried to talk, to apologize, to make deals. He slept on the couch. I couldn't even look at him. Every time I saw him move through the house, making coffee, folding laundry, whistling softly, I wondered how many of those gestures he'd repeated somewhere else. In another kitchen, with another woman watching him like I once did. Then, one morning, I woke up to find the mortgage notice on the counter again. A red stamp glared at me. Final notice. I checked the account. We were behind 3 months now. And there it was again. Another rent payment gone. Another Ava's tuition entry cleared. Something inside me snapped. I packed his things into boxes and left them by the door. When he came home that night, his eyes widened. "Clara, please." "No," I said firmly. "You've had 2 homes for years. It's time you pick one." He begged, cried, promised to end it all, to make things right. But trust isn't a light you can switch back on. Once it's gone, the dark stays. For a week, I barely slept. I replayed every memory, every trip, every gift, every excuse. And then I decided I needed to see the truth for myself. I found the address on one of the bank transfers and drove there on a gray Saturday morning. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. It was a quiet street, lined with maple trees and small homes. I parked across from a blue house with white curtains, the same address from the payment receipts. I sat there for a long time before a little girl ran out the front door. She was wearing a yellow dress. She looked so much like Emily when she was 5 that my throat closed. Then Michael stepped outside. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing. The woman from the pictures came out after him. She smiled and kissed his cheek before heading to the car. I watched, frozen, as my husband, kissed another woman goodbye like it was the most natural thing in the world.
But Lily began to recognize my voice. She'd turn her head when I spoke, reach for me sometimes, and every time she did, Evelyn's smile tightened. One afternoon, I caught her whispering to Victor in the kitchen. The arrangement was for her to stay quiet. "If she keeps digging, they'll come for us both," she hissed. My blood ran cold. The arrangement? What arrangement? Who was they? I slipped away before they saw me, my mind spiraling. That night, when everyone was asleep, I went into Evelyn's study. She kept everything locked, drawers, cabinets, even her desk. But I'd learned to be quiet in that house. I found the spare key taped under the second drawer. Inside, beneath a pile of old correspondence, I found an envelope marked with the hospital's logo. Inside were receipts, transaction slips, and one letter, a private adoption agreement. My name wasn't on it, but Victor's was. So was Evelyn's, and the name of another couple. They had planned to give Lily away. For money. I remember the moment I realized it. The world tilted again, but this time, the grief gave way to something sharper. Rage, not the loud, reckless kind. The kind that's cold, controlled. The kind that plans. If they thought I was fragile before, they were about to learn just how strong a mother can be when someone tries to steal her child. I didn't sleep that night. The letter sat on my lap under the yellow glow of the bedside lamp. My hands shook, but my mind was clear, painfully, terrifyingly clear. They had sold my child. They'd looked at the tiny life I carried for 9 months, the heartbeat I fell asleep to, and decided she was negotiable. By sunrise, I knew what I had to do. I hid the documents inside one of my old books, Little Women, of all things, and slipped it into my tote. When Victor came down for breakfast, he looked exhausted, his tie crooked, eyes bloodshot. He didn't notice the way I avoided his gaze, or how tightly I gripped the handle of my bag. Going somewhere.
A few weeks passed. Bills piled up, the mortgage weighed heavy, and I felt like I was fighting to breathe under the mountain of everything he left behind. Then, one morning, I found a letter in the mail. It was from her. The other woman. My hands shook as I opened it. It wasn't angry or defensive. It was heartbreaking. She wrote, "I didn't know about you. I swear. I thought he was divorced. I thought I was building a life with a man who was free to love me back. I only found out the truth when he told me he had to make things right. I'm sorry for everything." At the bottom, she added, "If it helps, I've left him too." I just sat there for a long time, holding that letter, realizing that 2 women had been living the same nightmare, both loving a man who belonged to neither of us. It didn't make me forgive him, but it made me understand one thing. Sometimes, the people we think are our enemies are just victims of the same lie. I decided to stop letting his choices define the rest of my story. I sold the house, the one filled with memories I could no longer live inside. Emily and I moved into a small apartment closer to her school. It wasn't big, but it was ours. For the first time in months, the air air felt light. I started working again, part-time at a local bakery. The smell of bread in the morning became my therapy, warm, comforting, real. And slowly, piece by piece, I began to feel like me again. One afternoon, while frosting cupcakes, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Michael. He sounded tired, defeated. "Clara," he said, "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. For everything." I took a deep breath. "I know," I said, "but sorry doesn't fix the past. I lost both of you," he whispered. "You didn't lose us," I replied. "You gave us away." There was a long silence before he said quietly, "How's Emily?" "She's doing okay. She misses you." He sighed. "Tell her you love her." "I'll tell her," I said. "But next time, maybe you should tell her yourself."
The library called, she replied smoothly. "Said you weren't there today." My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't expected her to check. Victor looked up sharply. "Claire, what's going on?" I forced myself to breathe slowly. "I went for a walk after. I needed air." Evelyn's gaze narrowed. "You've been anxious lately, unstable, even. Maybe you should see someone." I stared at her. "You're trying to make me sound crazy." Her lips curved. "I'm worried, dear. You've been through trauma. Sometimes grief can twist things." She was laying the groundwork to discredit me. I realized then, she knew. Somehow, she knew I'd found the documents. That night, I packed a small bag. Just the essentials: clothes, Lily's old blanket, the book with the papers inside. I waited until after midnight, listening to the slow rhythm of Victor's breathing beside me, the creak of the old house settling. When I was sure it was safe, I slipped out. The guest room door creaked when I opened it. Evelyn wasn't there, thank God. Lily was sleeping soundly, one arm flung over her stuffed bunny. I lifted her carefully, cradling her against me. She stirred but didn't cry. Her tiny hand clutched my shirt, her breath warm against my neck. That moment, carrying her into the moonlight, the world silent except for the whisper of leaves, was the first time I truly felt like her mother. I made it to the car before the porch light snapped on. "Claire," Evelyn's voice cut through the night like a knife. I froze, clutching Lily closer. She stood in the doorway in her robe, eyes gleaming. "Where do you think you're going?" "I'm taking my daughter," I said quietly. "My daughter, Evelyn, the one you stole from me." Her expression hardened. "You're hysterical. Put her down before you do something you'll regret." "She's mine," I said, louder now. "You've taken enough from me." Evelyn took a step forward, voice lowering. "You don't understand, Claire. You couldn't raise her. You were broken. I saved that."
When I look back now, I don't see a woman who was broken by betrayal. I see a woman who walked through fire and came out holding her child's hand, still standing, still soft. Pain has a strange way of teaching you who you are. E usa de tofink strengthen keeping everything together, pretending nothing hurt. But real strength is allowing yourself to fall apart and still choosing to stand up again. I learned that forgiveness isn't about letting the other person off the hook. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of their actions. Michael will carry his own lessons. As for me, I've made peace with the pieces that fell apart. Sometimes, when I see Emily sleeping, her little hand curled by her cheek, peaceful and safe, I realize that everything I lost was replaced by something even more valuable: clarity. Clarity about love. Clarity about self-worth. Clarity about the kind of woman I want my daughter to grow up to be. Someone who knows her value. Someone who never settles for love. Someone who chooses peace over pretending. And maybe that's the gift hidden in betrayal. It chatters de illusion, só de truth quem finally breat. If you're listening to my story tonight, maybe you've walked through your own version of heartbreak. Maybe your pain wears a different name: a friend who lied, a partner who left, a promise that broke. But the ache feels the same, doesn't it? That is what you want you to remember. You are not what someone else did to you. You are what you do next. And if all you do today is wake up, breathe, and decide to keep going, that's enough. That's healing. Because sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is simply not give up on ourselves. So, tell me in the comments, if you discovered a secret like mine, would you walk away? Or would you stay and try to rebuild what was lost? Either way, my friend, I hope you always choose yourself, with grace, with strength, and with peace.
Sure justice is served. As I walked out of that station, Lily in my arms, the air felt different, cleaner, but I knew this wasn't over. Because when you expose a lie that big, it doesn't crumble quietly. It fights back. The days that followed were a blur of interviews, paperwork, and waiting rooms that smelled faintly of disinfectant and burnt coffee. The police took my statement twice. They wanted every detail, every conversation, every inconsistency. I told them everything. Victor was questioned next. When I saw him leaving the precinct that day, his face was pale, his jaw tight. He didn't look at me, but I caught the brief flicker of guilt in his eyes before he climbed into his car and drove away. Evelyn, of course, denied everything. According to her, I was unwell. She told the officers I'd been seeing a therapist after a difficult childbirth, that I'd imagined the documents, the story, even the baby swap. She was careful, clever, every word designed to make her sound concerned, reasonable. But she didn't know I'd already spoken to the nurse who'd been on duty the night I gave birth. Her name was Teresa. She remembered me clearly, remembered how confused I was, how Evelyn had taken control of every conversation. She said she was your mother, Teresa told the detectives in her written statement. I thought it was odd because she seemed detached. She didn't comfort you when you were crying. I'd cried for hours that night. And now, 2 years later, that same nurse's words became the first crack in Evelyn's wall of lies. Victor called 3 days later. He didn't sound angry, just tired. Claire, he began quietly, we need to talk. I don't think there's anything left to say, I replied. He sighed. I didn't know what she'd done. I swear to you, I didn't. Didn't you? I said. You brought Lily home 5 months after you told me she was gone. What did you think had happened? He hesitated. She told me she found an orphan child, said she wanted to help, to fill the void, and I believed her. Because I wanted to. His voice cracked. I missed you, Claire. I missed what we were before the baby. I thought, maybe this could heal us. I closed my eyes. Heal us? Victor, she stole our daughter. She made me believe I'd buried her. I know, he whispered, and I'll do whatever it takes to make it right. But part of me didn't believe him. He'd stood beside Evelyn too many times. The investigation stretched on for weeks. Mara stayed by my side through every meeting. The adoption agency denied any wrongdoing, said all documents were legally processed. But with Teresa's testimony and a forensic examination of the signatures, the truth began to unravel. It turned out Evelyn had paid a hospital clerk under the table to falsify the death certificate. The same man had coordinated with a private intermediary to process the adoption under a different name. Everything she did had a paper trail, faint but there. And when the detectives traced the payment records, they found deposits in her account that matched the adoption fees. The day they came to arrest her, I didn't go. I couldn't. But I heard about it later. How she kept her posture straight, her pearls on, as if it were all beneath her. How she told the officers they were making a tragic mistake. Even as they led her away, she never lost her composure. Evelyn Carter always believed she was untouchable. The trial began 3 months later. By then, the story had leaked to local media. Headlines read, "Wealthy family accused of baby swap cover-up." I hated the attention, but there was a strange relief in it, like the truth was finally breathing after being buried alive. Victor sat on the defense side for the first week. Then, quietly, he moved. He began sitting behind me instead. He said it was to show support, but by then, the space between us felt permanent. When I testified, the courtroom went silent. I told them everything, the birth, the cold words, the empty cradle, the 5-month-old child who smiled like me. I showed them the documents, the notes, even the song Evelyn used to hum to Lily. At one point, I caught her watching me, that same cold smile tugging at her lips. When it was her turn to speak, she said, "Everything I did out of love." Claire was too fragile to raise a child. I stepped in to protect her, and my son. The judge didn't flinch. Neither did I. Because love doesn't look like lies and signatures. It doesn't sound like a lullaby sung over another woman's baby. By the time the verdict came, I was numb. Evelyn was convicted of fraud, falsifying medical documents, and unlawful adoption. She'd served time, not long, but long enough to face the silence she feared most. The hospital clerk was dismissed and charged as well. Victor, he walked free. The court accepted his claim that he'd been unaware. And maybe, in some twisted way, that was true. But ignorance doesn't erase betrayal. After the trial, he asked to see Lily. I agreed, under supervision. When he held her, his eyes softened. "She looks like you," he said quietly. "She is me," I replied. "Every inch of her. You just didn't see it before." He nodded, tears glistening. "I want to be in her life. If you'll let me." I wanted to say yes, but I couldn't, not yet. Some wounds don't close with apologies. A year later, life began to feel almost normal again. I moved into a small cottage near the edge of town. Lily loved the garden, especially the wildflowers that bloomed unevenly along the fence. Some nights, I'd sit on the porch, watching her chase fireflies, the air thick with summer warmth and the faint hum of cicadas. She'd laugh, call, "Mama, look," and my heart would swell so big it hurt. I still had nightmares sometimes. I'd wake up gasping, hearing Evelyn's voice saying, "The baby didn't make it." But then I'd see Lily's sleepy smile beside me, and I'd remember, the truth had found its way home. It wasn't justice that healed me. It was truth, raw, imperfect, painful truth, and knowing that my daughter would grow up hearing my voice, not the voice of someone who thought she could rewrite our story. Still, sometimes, when the wind rustled through the trees just right, I'd swear I could hear Evelyn's old lullaby carried faintly on the air. Not haunting anymore, just distant, a ghost of what used to control me. And I'd whisper back, softly, "Not anymore." 2 years later, on Lily's 3rd birthday, I hosted a small gathering at home. No grand decorations, no glittering balloons, just a handful of close friends, a strawberry cake, and the sound of children's laughter spilling into the late afternoon. Mara helped me set the table. She'd been there for every hard night, every moment when I doubted myself, every tearful call from the lawyer. 3 years, she said softly, adjusting a candle. "Can you believe it?" I smiled, watching Lily try to blow out the candles before we'd even finished singing. "Some days it feels like a lifetime," I said. "Other days, like it just happened yesterday." When the song ended and Lily clapped her tiny hands, I felt it again, that rush of gratitude mixed with grief. Because healing isn't a finish line. It's a circle you walk again and again, until the steps hurt a little less. After the trial, Victor moved away. He calls sometimes, sends postcards on holidays, but I keep the distance polite. He asks about Lily, how she's growing, what she likes, and I answer simply, I don't hate him. I don't think I ever truly did. Hate takes energy, and I spent enough years exhausted. But forgiveness isn't always about letting someone back in. Sometimes, it's just choosing peace for yourself. He asked once if Lily could visit when she was older. I told him we'd see. Maybe, when she can understand what happened. When she can decide for herself. Because the truth is, I don't want her growing up in the shadow of lies, even if those lies were wrapped in family names and good intentions. There are still days I wake up before dawn, heart racing, the smell of antiseptic and sorrow clinging to memory. I see that white hospital room, the empty cradle, the nurse's trembling voice, and then I hear the creak of Lily's door and the patter of her feet. "Mama," she says, her hair a messy halo. "The sun's awake." She always says it like it's a secret between us. And every morning, I whisper the same thing back. "So are we, baby." Last month, I started volunteering at the hospital. Not in the maternity ward, I'm not ready for that, but in patient support. I sit with mothers who've lost children, or think they have. I listen, sometimes silently, sometimes with tears that surprise me, because I know how it feels to live in that hollow space between hope and despair. And I've learned something important. Truth doesn't always come when you ask for it. Sometimes it waits, patient, painful, but certain, for the moment you're strong enough to face it. One evening, just before closing, I was walking down the hall when I heard a soft hum, that same lullaby Evelyn used to sing. I froze for a second, but then I realized it wasn't her. It was a young mother holding her newborn, humming absent-mindedly. And instead of pain, I felt warmth. Because for the first time, that melody didn't belong to my past. It belonged to someone else's joy, and I was finally free from it. Evelyn never reached out again. Her sentence was short. She served her time quietly. A letter arrived from her once, months after she was released. The handwriting was neat, almost careful. She wrote, "I wanted what was best for my son. I didn't see you. I only saw the idea of a family I could control. I'm sorry for the pain I caused, though I know sorry can't give back what I took." I didn't reply, because forgiveness, for me, had already happened, quietly, in the moments between heartbeats. Not because she deserved it, but because I needed it. Sometimes I think about the night I gave birth, the way my fingers reached out for a cry that never came. And how, 5 months later, that same cry echoed in my living room, alive and real. It taught me something I will never forget. Even in the deepest deception, truth has a pulse. And no matter how long it takes, it finds its way home. Now, every evening before bed, Lily asks me to tell her the story about the stars. It's one I made up, about a baby who got lost in the sky and a mother who never stopped looking for her. She always asks, did they find find each other. And I always answer, yes, my love. They found each other. They always do. Because we did. Against every lie, every silence, every shadow, we found each other. To anyone listening to my story tonight, if you've ever been made to doubt your truth, your instincts, your heart, hold on. Even when everyone tells you you're wrong, or crazy, or fragile. Because sometimes, the quiet voice inside you is the only one brave enough to save you. I learned that the hard way. But I also learned this: justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it looks like a mother rocking her daughter to sleep in peace. So, would you have done what I did? Would you have fought, even when everyone said it was over? Tell me in the comments. And if you've ever had to reclaim your truth, your voice, or your family, know that somewhere, someone's cheering for you, just like I am. Because in the end, love isn't what people say it is. It's what survives when everything else falls apart.